All right, we are back talking NFL Draft 2023 with Dave Syvertsen of our lads. Of course, he's the senior draft analyst now. Dave, how's it going?
Much better than 2 weeks ago. Sorry for the little hiatus. I caught the flu for the first time in about 15 years, and it put me through the ground. And then my son got it and put him through the ground. So it's been a rough 2 weeks. I did not disappear. I'm hoping my voice will make it through. I'm stocked up on water over here. But I'm really glad to be back and talking prospects with you. I'm glad we got it done going early because it gave us a little buffer for something like that.
Yeah, we want to remind everybody out there because we have had, which we completely welcome everybody's comments and questions. Hey, what about these guys? How come they're not on your list? And as we said at the beginning, and we'll keep saying, these are really early lists, and they're only like 10 players we'll talk about. So especially the skill position areas, there's just so many guys that. There could be a guy that's like 28th on your list right now, Dave, that'll end up like 5th when it's all said and done. So
that's I wouldn't be too, pigeonhole yourself too much into rankings right now. I think if you're in the ballpark, that's really all we care about. I personally don't care that much where I have guys ranked right now. There's still a lot of tape to be watched and information to get, but. It also has something to do with the COVID is still spillover in terms of who's going to be declaring for the draft because
very confusing.
Everybody got another year of eligibility that was playing college football in 2020. So and not every school lists them the same. That's what I think confuses the public, where some guys are listed as a junior, but really it's their 4th year, and some guys are listed as a sophomore. But it's really their 3rd year because 2020 did not count against their eligibility. And so what you'll see guys that are either missing from the list because I don't think they're going to come out, or we just haven't gotten to them yet. But by mid-January, we'll have our list ready. And that's when I would really start to firm up the stacks and the rankings and the grades. So I wouldn't worry too much about it right now. Right now, we should all just be in information gathering mode.
And we're going to have more than enough updated shows. So like, for instance, we've already done like 10 quarterbacks, running backs, receivers. We will be adding to that list as we talk. So it's just, we had to start somewhere and with some players, but we again, if there's any players that you're wondering about, hey, why aren't they on the list? Let us know. And then Dave will let you know what he thinks about those players in the comment area. In the comment section. So right there, you can have a back and forth on a specific player that we did not talk about. So those were the skill position players that we started with. And even though it's been a few weeks, we've already seen, a couple of weeks of games. Like, for instance, we were talking about Blake Corum, and then here goes Edwards that just goes off. And we knew he's going to be a good player because of his receiving ability. But the point is that, and we're going to see bowl games and we're going to see playoff games. And this is going to give players an opportunity to step up that maybe nobody even thought that they would either be in a top 10 list or even be considered like a top prospect. Like you talked about the kid from Florida State, the running back that I haven't really heard much of that you think could be a really top prospect, but you have no idea if the kid's coming out or not.
Yeah. That's why you can't rush the scouting process, right? I think in this world that we live in, it's always like, all right, watch a guy for a little bit, make your opinion, and never change. Right now, I really try hard to just watch these guys as much as possible. Early season, mid-season, end of season. And like you just said, there's so much that changes in such a short amount of time that it's really not needed to really grade a kid right now. And I think really what's needed is just to watch more and listen more and try to get some input from guys. And we'll try to do that for you guys to the best of our ability.
Let's talk offensive linemen. And normally 9 times out of 10, 99 out of 100, maybe 96 out of 100, the top offensive lineman in any draft is going to be a tackle. So, that shouldn't change with Peter Skoronski leading the way for on your list at number 1 at offensive tackle. How good is Skoronski compared to previous number 1 tackles that have come out in the NFL draft?
So last year you had Evan Neal, you had Charles Cross, you had Trevor Penning, you had Ike Ekwonu, I don't think he's going to meet those grades.
Outside the top 10 then?
Yes. Will a tackle? I feel like every team in the NFL needs offensive line help right now. So could that boost him up? Yeah, but in terms of overall grade, I don't think I'm going to have him in my top 10 overall. Questionable top 15. I do love his game, though. I feel safe with him. The question here, and this will be a deal breaker for some teams, is the length. His arms are going to measure in under 33-inch arms, and there are teams that will not consider you as a tackle if that's where you are. And, I could see, and I value the offensive line so much that I would still use a first on him if we viewed him as a guard. I think, are the Cowboys going to be are they upset that they drafted Zach Martin, the all-pro guard? No. Are the Colts, are they upset that they drafted Quentin Nelson at guard? I think that gets overplayed so much, whether it's the media, whether it's the NFL. I do see it turning a little bit where, hey, our offensive line situation is so bad, we need a good player in there. I don't care if he's a guard. And now you're going to see this offseason, the NFL is putting a lot more value on defensive tackles than they used to be from a pass rush perspective. Yep. I'm telling you this right now, in the next 5 years, the shift in the NFL from guards and centers is going to their value will increase a lot in the next 5 years. And because they need to protect the passer. We always use the tackles as the pass protectors. I think it's going to go close to equal value inside.
Interesting. All right.
And I think Skoronski, you feel good with him. He's the kind of guy, over his career, I think 4 pressures and a sack. Like, he doesn't lose one-on-one battles. He stays attached, just like Rashawn Slater did at Northwestern. Some guys thought he'd be a guard at the next level, turns into an all-pro rookie at tackle. And the things that they both do well, and I don't think it's a coincidence, they stay attached. They stay square. They stay under control. They don't lose one-on-one battles.
Your number 2 tackle, we have just heard, is coming back to school, correct?
Yes. Yep. Fashanu from Penn State. Yep. 19-year-old.
Okay. So, which is a smart move. That's young.
Yes, definitely a smart move. And if he progresses the way he did from last year to this year, if he has that same level of progression next year, there will no longer be a discussion who's the number 1 tackle will be in the draft. He'll be the number 1, no doubt.
All right. So, interesting. Looking at your list, I believe 5 of the top 6 are Big Ten linemen at tackle.
That is good observation. I didn't even notice that when I was writing that down. It's a good observation. That's pretty rare.
So your 3rd and 5th tackles are Paris Johnson from Ohio State and DeJuan Jones from Ohio State. Yep. So what separates these 2 guys specifically from each other?
So Johnson, he projects as a left tackle, and he allowed his first sack, I think, of his career in the Michigan game. That was the first one he had ever allowed.
Really?
And his athletic ability, his twitch, his body control, his ability to switch gears at the snap of a finger, it just seems so natural to him. And I even think that a team with a left tackle right now could draft him and put him at guard until they need a tackle, right? Like some of these teams that have an aging, kind of what the Cowboys did with Tyler Smith last year. They drafted him in the first round to play guard, but really it was a long-term replacement option for Tyron Smith at left tackle. And now, Smith gets hurt. The younger Smith moves out to left tackle. I view Paris Johnson in a similar light. Johnson did play left guard. That was his original spot. Yes. And now he's playing left tackle doesn't get penalized. He's another one of these guys that you can't beat him with power. You can't beat him with speed. And I think that you just feel safe with him on the outside. I love the position versatility. There's a lot of teams that will I'll probably talk about this at some point. A lot of teams like to take college tackles, and move them inside because of what I was saying earlier. Your ability to protect the passer is going to be huge inside because of the way the NFL is trending right now. So, yes, I have him as a tackle. Based on who drafts him, he could end up at guard.
And then DeJuan Jones, we know he's not playing guard. He is just too massive of a player, and really hadn't really blossomed until last year. That's when he broke out.
Right. I could probably count on one hand how many times a guy has measured in like this. 6'8", 370, 36-inch arms. And the craziest, the 90-inch wingspan is what gets
90.
me. Like anything above 83, 84 is like, wow, that's pretty big. He's at 90. It's a 7'6" wingspan. So
he's not getting
again,
out of the first round. Come on.
Yeah, I mean it's
a guy. Come on, a guy like that. It's going to be. Well, then again, we got the whole process to see everybody fall in love with him. So
he's an easy guy to like because he's so big, he doesn't even need to do everything right. He's a hard guy to get around.
So then whatever his issues then?
He's very top heavy. So when he doesn't properly line up his feet, like he has a weird body type. He's just really, really top heavy. His legs don't have that much thickness to them, which some teams, I know there are some scouts that like that. They like the upper body mass and the lower body being smaller so that it helps them move in and out of traffic. Right? Yeah. Exactly. But his footwork, it's not always there. And he gets really grabby. I think penalties are going to be an issue for him.
He's a big boy, next level. You know?
He is. So I mean, it's hard to be that big and that coordinated. You know, and in my opinion, that's one of the most overlooked traits with blocking at the next level. You need to be coordinated. And something easy to watch for when you watch these guys is when they come in contact with the defender, are they staying square, both from a lateral and vertical perspective? Are they showing their face mask to the ground? Or are they facing the guy that they're trying to block? Do they get thrown off? Like, do they get turned inside or turned outside by the pass rusher? Or can they stay square to the guy? And that's where his issues are. You know, you'll see a lot of tape with him where his face mask, his numbers, his jersey is facing the ground. That's not a good spot to be in against pass rushers.
Is that? Do you think his weight, based on his height, is adequate? Or does he need to lose some weight?
I would like to see him come below 350. And I think he will. You know, you don't see many linemen in the game playing at above 360 pounds. You just don't. I think he'll be closer to 350. I think for his long-term health, that'll be a big deal as well.
And that's going to be the reason why it's going to be hard to invest a first-round draft pick on him based on – because all you have to look is Mekhi Becton and what he's going through.
That's exactly. On my report of Mekhi Becton, I was like, I don't know if he's going to stay healthy. I'm not saying I predicted it, but human beings are not meant to be that big, you know, unless you have a very specific body type. And these guys, Mekhi Becton and DeJuan Jones, have similar body types in that they were pretty top heavy. And, you know, again, it helps them move in pass protection. And this kid was he was a Division I basketball recruit at a high school. So the kid's an athlete. Yeah. But again, you just talked about the lower body joints, the ankles, the knees, the low back, the hips. You know, that's a lot of weight to carry around when you're trying to be fast. And I just don't think it's necessary.
Quickly on Ohio State, I should have asked this in the outset, but because we were talking about players that might have upped or down their stock a little bit in the last couple of weeks since we've spoken. But what about anything in the Ohio State-Michigan game that you changed your opinion any way, shape, or form on C.J. Stroud?
Ooh, on C.J. Stroud. Yes, because we've seen Stroud become innovative against bad teams. But I think the thing that is going to concern, and we've talked about this, is how much can Stroud create on his own when there's a lot of pressure, whether we're talking about the mental pressure of a big game or the physical pressure of guys getting after you. Because he's not a special athlete. He's not very strong either. He's not
Justin Fields.
Yeah, so what can he do when the play breaks down? And the best quarterbacks in the NFL, the ones that are winning games for their team, actually elevating the level of players around them, are the ones that create on their own. They don't only need the system to create it for them. You know, that's always been Jimmy Garoppolo's downfall, right? Is when the system's working, he looks great. When he needs to do something himself, he's out. And I think that's the kind of trajectory I'm putting Stroud on right now. And I was hoping, for his sake, I'm not an Ohio State fan or a Stroud fan. I was just hey, if I'm going to put this kid in my top 5, top 10, I want to see him create. He had the opportunity to create, and he failed. And that's going to be something that really sticks out to me in the evaluation process.
And he also, in that critical fourth down, he had the receiver. I don't think it was Stover. Might have been. But he had the receiver there.
He missed a couple
and
throws.
He just overthrew him. And that would have been a huge first down they would have got the first down inside the 15 maybe. And if they score a touchdown there, if they go up 2 scores, I believe at the time. And he also had a 3rd and 10 early enough in the game where the receiver was open and he just completely sailed it over his head and he had to punt the ball. So there were a couple of spots that and you have to be on in these big games, you know,
right.
And spotlights like on you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really what matters most at the quarterback. And it might seem unfair from the outside, but you need to play your best football in the toughest moments. And if you don't, you'll never be great. And I think that's just the simplest way to put it. And you know, he's going to probably have another opportunity to maybe make up some of the ground. But that game tape, last year's Michigan tape too, will pop up, will rear its ugly head in the evaluation process.
If they do find a way to get into the playoffs, he'll be going head-to-head more than likely with Georgia. And that would be his opportunity to showcase his skills or not. And then you know what? There's also a chance that if they don't get in, we could see Ohio State against Alabama in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, those 2 quarterbacks better play.
Yeah.
They better not screw the fans out of a possible C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young Rose Bowl.
That's a great point by you, because the way it's trending right now, if you're not in the playoffs, those are the games you sit out. I have a feeling we'll see Young, but I'm not sure about Stroud. Stroud seems like the kind of guy that kind of reads his own headlines more so than Young.
Now, a lot of those key Ohio State guys did pass
Sat out
on the Rose Bowl game.
Right? Yeah. Olave, Garrett Wilson. Yep.
All right. Canadian Matthew Bergeron is next.
Yeah.
This is not a Big Ten player, but this is a consistent Iron Man at this point in his college career. He's played a lot of football.
Yeah. You know, I loved him early in the year. He was really high up on my list early in the year. I think he was top 2 or top 3.
Oh, okay.
And he's had a little bit of he's digressed a little bit over the past few weeks against his toughest matchups. Clemson, who's got multiple NFL draft picks along the line, and FSU, who's got Jared Verse, who could be a sneaky first-round pick. He got beat by both of those teams routinely. And because of that, I did bump him down a little bit. But again, he's another one that I think could end up being a guard. I see a lot of Zion Johnson in his game. He measures in better than Zion Johnson did when it comes to the length, so he could stay on the outside. But I think his latch game, when he gets his hands on you and he doesn't have to deal with the space to his outside shoulder, he's dominant. And I think that's where I could see him moving inside and being a really good player. Or if he stays on the outside, it's going to be a little bit of a gamble just because some of his best competition. And that's one of my biggest things in evaluating talent is, can I get tape on guys that are playing against other pro prospects? Like, I'm not really,
that's your
I'm
dream.
not really interested in watching Alabama versus Central Arkansas. No, it just doesn't do anything for me, right? His tape against the best guys, it was rough. There's still enough traits in his game, and there's still enough quality tape for me to consider him a top 5 tackle in this group. Still maybe a borderline first rounder, but he might be heading towards a position change.
Okay. Now, what about next on your list? You have, I believe, what is it? What are we at? 5, 6?
Yeah, we're at 6.
So Jalen 6 and 7, you have Jalen Duncan, who's got really good size. Another guy that's, 6'6", 320 range. He's had a lot of experience playing left tackle. And then you got the kid from Oklahoma. After that, Anton Harrison, who's also played left tackle. So kind of comparable, those two?
Yeah, I think right now, Anton Harrison is trending up and Jalen Duncan is trending down. Duncan is another guy. When you see the size and you see his initial footwork post-snap, when you see him initially do it, you're like, all right, that's the way it's supposed to look. But he's lost a lot of battles to his outside shoulder this year, way more than I wanted to see. Jalen Duncan, when we talked about him prior to the year with a couple of scouts, we all agreed that he had a shot at the first round if he played well this year. But he hasn't played well. I think he's 7 penalties, 4 sacks in, and almost all of his sacks are to the outside shoulder. Is it a strength issue, a little bit of a length issue? I think it's a sum of both. He might be another guy that moves guard, and I know I keep bringing that up, but it does happen every year. On average, I have a list on my computer of tracking how many times a college tackle moves inside to guard or center even. and it's a good 7 to 9 guys per year that get drafted as a tackle, but the team is drafting them to play inside. So I think Duncan might be one of those guys because he has the size, he's got the anchor to play inside, but he's proving to me right now that the pass protection on the outside is a little rough. Where Anton Harrison, he's a guy that I was told prior to, but someone that knows offensive line better than anyone I know, he said that's the guy to watch. And my initial thought on him was he looks really off balance, a little high cut, not enough bend flexion in the knee and ankles, which makes people bend at the waist, which is, pass rushers salivate at guys like that. But as the year has progressed, he's been the opposite of Duncan. He's gotten better and better and better. And I think that if there's, the snappy feet, the wide wingspan, he flashes. His upside flashes a little bit more than Duncan. So right now, I made this list a couple of weeks ago. I might even flip these two right now.
Okay. Sure sounds like it.
Yeah, right.
All right. Now, let's talk about the next two guys. And these two might be playing against each other on opposite sides in the playoffs. And that is, you have Broderick Jones from Georgia, who really as a 5-star recruit, typical Georgia, you have these 5-star recruits sitting for a couple of years. And he finally got the opportunity. He played a little bit last year, but finally got the opportunity to be a full-time guy this year. And then, of course, you have Ryan Hayes from Michigan. Speaking of elite size, you now have another guy, a mammoth kid, who actually, I believe he was an edge rusher, tight end prospect out of high school, moved over to offensive tackle in college, made his pretty much his full-time debut last season. And Michigan's had a really good offensive line ever since he's stepped onto the field these last 2 seasons.
Yeah. Broderick Jones, I think right now I'm not sure if he's going to come out because of what you said. Does he have enough experience, right? Could he go back, have a productive 2023 in college, and all of a sudden put himself in the top 10 discussion? I don't think he's there with this class. So I think another, if I was advising him, if we were really confident that he has some, things he can improve on, I would push him to go back to school. Because right now I kind of have him like in a round 2, round 3 area, where I do think he has the upside of being a first rounder. Like you also said earlier, all it takes is one coach, one general manager to be like, hey, that kid's going to hit his upside. Let's grab him in round 1. I wouldn't be surprised. His pass protection is so elite. I would love to see him match up against the Michigan guys. Just the way he moves his feet, how accurate he is with his hands. But what stands out about his game is the secondary contact wins, meaning he doesn't always win the initial contact battle with the pass rusher, but he adjusts so well. He can rework his hands. He can re-anchor if he initially gets pushed back, and he adjusts really well to lateral stunts and twists and late blitzes. He's just a twitchy guy that I think that those are the traits that the NFL is looking for because of how complex defenses are getting now with their pass rushers and their blitz packages. He's the kind of guy that adjusts really well. Ryan Hayes is just one of my favorite pure football players to watch. And it's been that way since the beginning of the season.
Really?
I think I had him pretty high compared to most early in the year. I do think he could end up being higher than this. There is some lower body tightness that I think is going to bother some teams, maybe even to the point where he can make a run-in type move to the guard. Current star for the Packers. I think he was a 6th-round pick. Hayes will go higher, but he's enormous. He's physical. And if I had to rank who's got the strongest hands in the class, I think Hayes is up there among all the offensive linemen. And that's a big deal. A lot gets made up with offensive linemen and their ability to move. But I'll tell you what matters more. It's the ability to play strong with their hands. The NFL is still and always will be a game full of big, strong men. And if you can't play that power game, you're in trouble. I remember when I was working with the East-West Shrine Bowl, meeting with an offensive line coach and watching film with him, he's like, do they still go to the weight room at all? Like, what's the deal? Because, I think so much of sports performance has turned into explosion and speed and working out well in tights. But I'll tell you what, in the NFL, that matters less than I think people think. You got to be able to play a power, mean game, and Hayes is that guy.
Okay. And then lastly, your number 10 guy on the list is the kid from Tennessee, You're looking at Darnell Wright, a 5-star kid.
Yep.
So is he just kind of finding his way right now? Because we haven't really heard much about him before this season, correct?
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee really got put onto the national spotlight this year. I think that did help him a little bit, but you do go look at some of his past film. It's different than what it is right now. I think he's just a late bloomer, and that happens. They don't all progress at the same rate as kids. Like DeJuan Jones, he's massive. He's a hard guy to get around. He's 6'5", 347. As a matter of fact, I think this is the body that DeJuan Jones eventually needs to get to, like that 350-pound area.
Okay.
And what stood out to me was his performance against Will Anderson, the pass rusher from Alabama. He beat him routinely, and Anderson's been a little underwhelming to me.
Yeah,
this
he
year.
has.
So
yeah,
he's still a top prospect because of the way he can move.
we just suspected he was going to dominate though this year.
Yeah, I was expecting more. Yeah. I'm sure we'll get into him at some point, but Darnell Wright kind of tossed him around, and what you like about him is similar to Hayes, is you can't knock him off for center of mass. Like he's such a strong, powerful dude. He is like your old school right tackle, and I think that's where he's going to end up at the next level.
Okay. Let me see if there's anybody else that I wanted, because of course you've got your other list, right. And I'm just based on some guys that I've heard about. Connor Galvin.
It's funny, Connor Galvin, I've been scouting him thinking he's going to come out for 3 years now. I thought he was going to come out in 2020. He didn't. 2021. I was shocked that he came back for 2022. He's going to be on the older side. I don't have his age in front of me, but he's going to be up there. Love the body control, but there's going to be some body issues with him. His lower body is a little thinner than I think some teams want, and I think there's a length issue there as well, and it shows up on tape. You just can't get that lockout game sometimes. If he's the kind of blocker that if he does not win the initial battles positioning with his hands and his feet, he has a hard time recovering. I just got done talking about Jones from Georgia, how well he does with recovering. That's a huge part of blocking. You're never going to win all the time. Galvin has shown struggles in that department.
Now, his guys that we've heard their name a lot, obviously with Clemson because of their winning, and that's Jordan McFadden. And we've also heard a lot about Jackson Kirkland. But of course, he had to come back. And tell me how these guys, because they're not on your list.
Yeah, I do have McFadden on my guard list.
Oh, he's on your guard list. Okay.
Yeah, I should probably preface that. I will when we talk about the guards. I already moved him because his size would be such an outlier at tackle. But yes, he's played tackle only at Clemson. But I do like him.
Okay.
He's my number 2 guard. So we'll talk about him at some point.
Next.
Kirkland's on the old side, has dealt with some durability issues, but I was told by someone higher up than me that I need to give him another look because teams are going to like him. I just didn't know if he was going to be a guard or a tackle at the next level, and I have some ugly tape on him from last year that I just can't get past. I'll probably give him another look over the next month. I've only seen him once this year, but I think that there's going to be an inside-out versatility to his game that will help him out a lot. Some teams will say, hey, you're a tackle, but we know we could put you at guard if we need. Or some teams will say, hey, you're a guard, but we'll put you at tackle if we need. And that's huge for a player's worth at the next level because of how often guys get injured on the offensive line. If you can really play a credible level of football at tackle and guard, that alone could boost your grade by a round or 2.
And what was the deal? Like he was he had an ankle injury. That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's the reason he had to come back.
Yeah. And he already doesn't have the strongest base. I thought the biggest negative in his game was his anchor. And for a tall guy, I think he's 6'7", for a tall guy that has an anchor issue, that's going to be a problem. He's going to have to really learn how to engage his lower half a little bit more. And I think the adjustment speed in his game is probably the issue that I saw on tape this year was adjustment speed. That could still be a lingering effect from the ankle. That's why I need to give him another look at the end of the year.
Okay. I know last year Hutchinson had a really good game against them.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of concern, obviously, with that. But
Yep. That's one of the one of the ugly tapes I was referencing
Oh,
from
okay.
last year.
All right.
Is he didn't see a lot of competition last year against NFL prospects, and the second he did, he got tossed around, and that's concerning.
All right, so I'm just going to run by these names, and you just tell me which one maybe on the top of your other list that I have a lot, but I'm going to try to narrow them down.
Okay.
Aaron Frost from Nevada, Javon Foster from Missouri, Cole Spencer from Texas Tech, McClendon from Georgia, Gray from Oregon State, Patrick Paul from Houston, and maybe even Raekwon O'Neal from UCLA, former Rutgers kid. So what about any of those guys?
I would say the kid from Nevada, Frost. I love his game as a run blocker, but he's given up so much pressure this year. I think he's one of the top 6 or 7 guys in pressures allowed this year.
Good.
I think in the entire country, yeah. I mean, and I think he's probably going to have to move inside. McClendon is another guy. I just wasn't sure if he was going to come out this year. I think he's a little too top heavy. Again, he's someone that shows his numbers and face masks to the ground a little too often. But again, down the stretch, I think if he puts together some quality football against some of his best opponents and on the highest stages, I think he's someone that could kind of boost his play up a little bit. The kid from Texas Tech, I think that he has probably, of the group that you just said, I think he's got the most upside.
Okay.
But that's always a tough offense to scout from. It just doesn't translate to the NFL that well. There's not a lot of run blocking to look back on. A lot of their quick passing sets are so quick that he's never really had to sustain contact for that long. And there's still a lot of unknown with his footwork. But from what I've seen from a physical gift perspective, size, measurements, I think that of that group, he's probably the one with the highest upside.
And of course, he came from Western Kentucky, so at least there's tape there.
Right.
I don't know if the offenses are much different though, because Western. Yeah,
very similar.
So,
very similar. Kind of like that air raid attack. Yeah.
All right. Let's move inside to offensive guard and Osiris Torrance. We've heard a lot about Osiris Torrance. We heard how good he was in the Sun Belt, and then he gets the opportunity to follow his coach to Florida, and you wondered about, well, how's that going to go? Sun Belt is much different from SEC. Apparently, it's gone well.
Yeah, it hasn't allowed a sack yet in the SEC. He goes from all Sun Belt in 2020 and 2021 to he will most likely be first team all SEC in 2022. And you combine that with the size that he brings to the table, he'll immediately be one of the biggest guys in the room, whatever offensive line room he gets drafted into, just both from a thickness and length.
Oh, he's got that perfect guard size.
Yeah, he's got everything. We've seen some losses to his explosion off the ball. That's going to bother some teams. He just doesn't get out of his stance fast, if you want to be simple about it. His feet are not always in the best position, but that's something that I'm confident can be coached up. I think he's a day one starter in the NFL.
So he's a first round guy.
I think he's towards the end of the first round guy. This interior class as a whole, to me, is going to be a little weak. So because of that, I think that could boost him. He's probably one of maybe 2 or 3 guys of all the centers and guards that I'm like, hey, he's a week 1 starter. And because of that, I think the league will look at him the same way.
Okay.
I could see him getting drafted pretty high.
All right, now let's talk about McFadden. So we had him as a tackle, which he is, but you think he will be moved inside?
Yeah, dating back 10 years, someone that's 6'2" playing left tackle, it's pretty much happened one time. Kelvin Beachum, it's not that height is that big of a deal, but again,
6'2"
it's very small. Isaiah Wynn was the last short left tackle that I've seen drafted, and he has not played well. I'm not saying that's why. But again, I do think things matter like that with the NFL. You really need to look at trends and what the league's looking for. But I love him as a guard prospect. I'm higher on him than anyone I've talked to. This kid's got 5 penalties in over 2,500 snaps. And he has good length. That's why it's worked for him at tackle. He's got 34-plus inch arms and an 81-inch plus wingspan. That's above average for the inside. And I love how he moves. I think a team that is pretty zone scheme when it comes to blocking, they're going to love him because when you see him get out in space as a lead blocker, I don't know if you've seen any recent tape on Trent Williams, but it looks like he moves like a 230-pound tight end. Like that's how comfortable he is in space. And, he's been a tackle only, right tackle and left tackle his entire career at Clemson. So there might be an adjustment for him. Might not be an immediate starter, but I think he has the ability to do it.
All right, Layden Robinson. Next up, Texas A&M. Talk about Robinson.
2021 All-American that he went backwards this year. He's had a rough year. They made an offensive line. I mean, that whole program has been a disaster this year. And
I think they're counting their money a little bit too much.
Yeah, I agree. And they had an offensive line coach switch this past year. And if you go watch his 2021 tape and then watch the 2022 tape, you really feel like you're watching two different guys. And I'm not sure if they tried to switch something up with him because talent-wise, he has everything you need. Length, ability to move, explosive. He's an explosive contact guy. Like when he lines it up, he can send someone flying, especially at the second level. But, he's allowed a lot of pressure. He's top 12 in the country in pressure allowed. And he's a junior. He might go back because of such a poor season. But if I'm him and I'm looking at the situation at Texas A&M right now, and considering the fact that this guard class just lacks a lot of quality players at the top, he could be someone that goes to a combine and has enough quality tape to say, hey, I had the talent here, had a little bit of a rough year. I'm still a starting quality caliber lineman.
He could also transfer, couldn't he?
Yes. I mean, I was thinking about a lot of kids from that program might end up transferring. Not sure what's going to be going on there, but with how easy it is to transfer now, I mean, it makes things hard for us because these kids, it's just you have just hundreds of kids transfer every year. It's just, for the bookkeeping purpose of it. But I do think it'd be a smart move for him to either come out, considering the strength of the class around him, or go back, transfer to another program.
Well, the transfer portal has helped out tremendously just for, teams and players getting an opportunity to play that never really thought they were going to get an opportunity. I mean, all you got to do is look at Austin Jones from USC, and we'll see him tonight. Big stage. And he has been really, kind of out of nowhere. Stanford transfer that has picked it up since Travis Dye's injury. So, we can go all the way down to Burrow on how the transfer portal has been a major success overall for the game and for players that
I agree.
can play, and that gives you the tape you're really looking for. Steve V is next. Is he going to be a center or a guard?
I think he's going to be a guard. He has played both. He's played all three spots. He's played guard, center, tackle. And again, like I said earlier, teams are going to love that about him. And I think he's got his movement traits. I think he's going to have to stay inside. I just don't think he's as light on his feet. But he's got great size and great power, a great anchor, so that I think he's going to be able to keep the pocket where it needs to be, right? Some of these guards and centers now are just getting pushed back, and it's making a lot of quality quarterbacks look bad in the NFL this year. They're just not comfortable in the pocket. I feel confident with his ability to protect the passer. He's done a great job. He's got a very high success rate as a pass blocker at TCU. And, the frame is what a lot of these other kids don't have. He's pretty top heavy, hard guy to push around. And again, like I said, when you can bring in a backup offensive lineman, which is what he'll be early on, that can play multiple spots, it's a big deal.
All right, well, we'll definitely have an opportunity to see him more than likely, not just on Saturday, but in a playoff matchup against potentially Georgia. Who knows?
Yeah.
Could be Michigan.
Against who I consider to be the best football player in the nation right now in terms of the NFL draft is Jalen Carter. If he can get some snaps against him.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
That'll be very must-watch TV.
Javion Cohen. We talk about Gilbert's potential mental health issues, personal issues.
Yep.
Cohen also has that kind of hanging over him, but hopefully that's just something that he'll have to manage. What about his ability at the next level?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely going to be a guard at the NFL, but when he started off at Alabama, he did see some snaps at left tackle. So I like that versatility. He has not allowed a sack over the course of his entire career. hard to do that in the SEC, especially with how many times that team throws the ball. Again, these questions off the field, they are going to be a make or break for some of these kids. And, that's information that I have no right to get my hands on. He's pretty open about it, his story. I'm sure there's more to it. But that's where the interviews for him are going to be crucial. All right. They're important for every prospect, but there are some guys where it matters more than others. And when you really have to dive in, because again, you have to view these prospects partially, at least, as investments, right? These teams are investing finances into them, but also just, the asset of a draft pick on them. And before they do that, they need to feel really comfortable that you're going to be able to stay in the game and continue to apply yourself in the safest way possible. But on the field, that's what I'm trying to focus on. Him and my number 7 guy, Ekiyor, they're both just absolute road graders. They get a lot of movement off the ball, and that's something that we don't see enough of out of young guards that come to the league. They get, it's pretty easy to see, especially if you're going to be watching from the broadcast angle, is do they maintain their positioning at the point of attack on a running play, or are they losing ground? And running backs hate that when they're approaching the line and they're already having offensive linemen that the action move towards them as they're trying to press the hole. That it's a major issue that can prevent a guy from getting on the field. Both of these kids from Bama, they're constantly getting movement off the ball. And they're both high success rate pass rushers. It doesn't always look pretty. They don't always get their feet off the ground quick enough, but they're powerful. They're sticky with their hands, and they come from a program that is constantly producing a lot of NFL talent.
The guy in between, Andrew Voorhees. Now, if you use Pro Football Focus as a tool, which a lot of us do, he's like a god at Pro Football Focus. So what do you think about that? Why do you think they love him so much? And where do you see his his best position at the next level? And how do you judge this guy overall? Because USC, we're going to be able to see them tonight, maybe in the playoffs. So this is a guy you want to keep an eye on and see who he's going to go up against for sure.
Yeah, definitely a guy you want to keep an eye on. Another one of these guys, there's nothing special about his game other than his PFF grade. But he does everything well. He's one of those guys where I don't feel good about his ceiling, but I feel great about his floor. Okay. And I want him on my team. Do I want him in my starting lineup? I'm not sure yet. There's some length issues. He doesn't always, and when you have a length issue like that, your margin for error immediately post snap is very small. And if he does not win with his footwork and his hip placement immediately, he has a hard time recovering. So there's some ugly tape there with him that I think is going to bother some teams. But again, another guy that has position versatility, guard and tackle, and he trusts his technique. He's an older kid. He's got a ton of experience, and a kid that plays that much football and his techniques are that repeatable, meaning it's just over and over. It looks like the same thing. You feel good about it. I just don't ever see him being a guy that's going to come in and just kind of take over in the trenches. PFF grade aside, I don't see an immediate starter, but I see a guy that you feel really good about having on your depth chart.
Also in the SEC, you got Broker. Now, Broker was a left tackle. That's where he played most of his career. Switched inside this season, which was a good thing because that's really what, again, you have him as a guard. So that's how that's where he's going to have to be lined up anyway in the NFL. So how does he look as a guard?
His game to me has always screamed guard. I started scouting him in 2020. And then 2021, I saw the same exact thing. It's like, hey, he's stout. He plays sticky with his hands. He's got a great anchor, so he's going to be able to screw himself into the ground against quality bull rush. But some of the issues that we saw on tape always had to do with outside shoulder pass protection, and he just won't have to deal with that if he stays at guard. Okay. I'm really glad they moved him there this year because it showed that any production issue that he had prior to this season was just because he was at the wrong position. He was at tackle, and now that he's at guard, his production is through the roof. He stays attached. My question with him is just what is the pure physical upside? There's not a lot of explosive contacts, so he's not a guy that gets a lot of movement off the ball. Some of those movement issues that we saw in pass protection at tackle could rear their ugly head with the way the league is trending when it comes to putting a lot of speed inside at defensive tackle. But like Voorhees, you feel good about having him on your team, or you feel good about putting him into the lineup if your starter goes down. I question the physical upside just based on a talent perspective.
Ohio State, another lineman from Ohio State, Matthew Jones is next on your list, and Matthew, more of a rotational guy up until this season. So this is supposed to be a season where he's supposed to go out there and get his full-time playing time. So how has he looked? And he could also possibly be a center too, couldn't he?
Yeah, he could be a candidate to move to center. Absolutely. That Ohio State program has had, I would say an above average amount of guys that made it to the NFL. So I think they were just blocking him early in his career. He just couldn't get on the field. He couldn't get past some of these guys. The lack of experience does bother me a little bit. But he's been on the field for over 620 pass plays, and he hasn't allowed a sack yet. So that right there is okay. He can handle himself in that role. He missed the Michigan game, I think, with a lower body injury. So we have to kind of keep an eye on that. I'm not sure what it is. They're being kind of hush-hush about it. He's got a great body, great hands. I just want to see a little bit more. It's hard to really give him a full evaluation at this point. But I like what I see so far, and it's someone that could probably move up a couple spots before the process is over.
The last guy on your list of rankings is FCS player from Chattanooga, McClendon Curtis. So what about this kid?
Teammate of Cole Strange last year, and it was pretty one of these situations where it was pretty obvious that while you're breaking down Cole Strange, you were like, okay, he's the next one. We're going to be talking about this kid next year. And I always love here, that's how I like to find a player. It's like he kind of catches your attention rather than you were looking for something. He was a guard, and I think he's going to be in the NFL. I think he'll be a guard as well. He's playing tackle this year, and it's going really well. He hasn't allowed a sack against lower level competition. Okay. He'll be at the Senior Bowl. He will probably be on if you're going to ask me who's 5 guys can gain the most at the Senior Bowl, he's going to be on the list. Just the way Cole Strange ended up being on the first round. It was a surprise to all of us, but I think the Senior Bowl was huge for that result. He has outstanding length. I think his arms measuring at over 35 inches, and his overall movement traits, like he has the ability to move his feet well. He just doesn't always do it. It's a really when you're watching his tape, especially in the running game, it's just inconsistent. He looks dominant one play, and then you see a balance issue on the next. And the body type kind of pushes me towards that notion as well, that I think there's going to be some balance and control issues. But again, if he goes and dominates at the Senior Bowl, there are people that think he could be a second-round pick.
All right, and then other players that I was looking at before the season began and found out weren't on your list. So tell me about which one of these guys stick out. Caleb Chandler from Louisville, Cooper Beebe from Kansas State, and TJ Bass from Oregon.
So Bass, I just don't see an NFL athlete in him. He's on the free agent tier of mine. He's a lot of experience. I think he's got some accolades there. Similar to Calvin Throckmorton, if you remember him from Oregon a couple years ago.
Yeah, he's playing right now for who?
He is the Saints.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He's kind of he's a backup, but because of injuries, he's been getting some playing time. He hasn't been playing well, but hey, he's in the league right now. And I believe he went undrafted. And he was another guy. I'm like, hey, I love watching this kid, but you look at the traits. Yeah, he's probably not going to be a draft pick, but Bass could be a guy that goes undrafted but makes the team and sticks just because he's a football player, and I feel like he knows how to block. Right? I mean, we could talk about all these techniques and everything, but can you block the guy in front of you? He does it at a high success rate. There's just some traits that I think he's missing on. Caleb Chandler is a guy that I think he's going to wow in workouts. I think teams are going to start to fall in love with him in that process, but there's a lot to not like about his tape. Balance issues, leverage issues. He doesn't always reach his points, even though he can. So, what's the deal there? Why isn't he reaching his points? Is it a footwork? Is it a concentration issue? I just feel like a guy with that much talent, that much power, that much speed should be winning more than he does. And if he hasn't figured out yet, what's preventing him from getting there? BB, I don't have declaring. If he comes out, he'll be on this list for sure. Fun kid to watch, old school blue collar. I don't have a measurement on him. It looks to me that's going to be probably his biggest red flag. He could be a guy that moves to center for that reason. But a fun kid to watch. And I think in this center group, which we'll get to, I'm sure, it's a weak group compared to what we've seen in the past. And I think if BB comes out and some teams view him as that guy, he could end up being the top center in this draft, just with how well he can get out of his stance and get to the outside.
Well, speaking of centers, let's talk about the number one guy in your list, John Michael Schmitz from Minnesota. And if you like this Abraham dude, a lot of the reason why he's able to run up the middle is because of Minnesota's sixth-year center. So he's actually been graded, again, if you take a look at Pro Football Focus, he's been graded like every year behind Linderbaum.
Yeah.
Now he's the man. So what have you seen specifically that has given you, that has made this kid the number one center prospect coming in?
Yeah, he's definitely the number one. I don't think there's much debate there unless BB comes out and you want to put him in the center stack. It's funny, in my notes for my scouting notes for him, I have written down 3 different times, he's not Linderbaum. He's not Linderbaum. I don't see him on that level. And I even wrote Cam Jurgens. I loved Cam Jurgens last year. I had them graded right next to each other. I thought Jurgens was on Linderbaum's level, and I think he will end up being on the same level down the road. Maybe even better. Schmitz is not that guy. He's not the athlete that those guys are. I think he has more power in his game. He's someone, I just don't see someone like what Linderbaum and Jurgens, one of the main attractions to their game coming out of college for both of them was the ability to get out on the edge post snap. You don't see a lot of centers that can move like that. And it's a weapon. With the way blocking schemes are set up, he's not that guy, Schmitz. But he's someone that can handle the power and the size of NFL defensive tackles right away. On an island as a pass rusher, he's allowed 2 sacks this year. You don't like to see that from a center. There's a little too much all or nothing in his game for me to really put him in like any sort of first round, maybe even second round tier. One of my mentors, Dan Shanka, he's always taught me when you see an offensive lineman that's falling to the ground often for no reason, right? That's a major red flag. And I see that out of him. Not every week, but there's a lot of tape on him where he winds up on the ground. And that's a little bit of an issue for me when you're talking about the athletic upside.
Quick question regarding, I was just running through my notes and I ran through Mahogany. Is he coming back for Boston College? Do you know? Christian Mahogany?
I haven't updated myself on that. I assumed he would.
Yeah.
So on my grading sheet, I have a red line through him, and red line usually to me is on my stack sheet is he's going back, but that was just my projection.
Okay. Yeah, that's like I said, I was just running through that. I was like, I forgot about him. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is Jared Patterson from Notre Dame, and I know Notre Dame, they had a little bit. I mean, they were not as fine-tuned earlier this season, but they really kind of picked up the pace up front, and he was definitely a part of that.
Yeah, him not playing early in the year definitely was a part of their struggles. I wish he had played in that Ohio State game. I really wanted to see him play against them. But he's playing guard this year. I'm keeping him at center. I think that's where he ends up at the next level. I think that's where his best football was shown, was at center. And there's a length issue, but I love the intelligence. I love the leadership. And that is one of the main attributes that you're not always going to see on tape with centers. They are they are the second most important leader on the field when your offense is on the field. You got the quarterback, obviously, but if you have a center in there that can really command the group, make all the calls, know exactly what the defense is doing, it makes an enormous impact. And he's that guy. He's that quarterback of the offensive line that is going to elevate the situation around him. And then as a player, is he great? No. Is he a great athlete? No. Is he a great size? No. Does he get great movement off the ball? No. So you're not looking at someone that's going to be, a day one starter, Pro Bowler. But I think there's a lot of bad centers in the NFL right now. And I think because of that, Patterson's going to get a job probably before the end of year one. I don't think it'll be right away, but you feel safe with him.
Alex Forsyth. So you have him third. And he's got the back injury that's kind of like the big thing hanging over him, right?
Yeah, the medicals are going to be the most important part of the process for him. They could be bad enough that he goes undrafted. They could be overlooked to the point where he ends up he's a dark horse for the first center in this class. He just recently got his Senior Bowl invite. I don't think he's going to be the top center, but there are some people that I talk to that do think he's got a shot because of the frame and the athletic ability. He moves better than both the guys above him, and some teams value that a lot. And he has a frame that looks like it's going to be able to hold a little bit more functional muscle mass, especially below the waist. And so if this guy comes into the league and gets that, lower body, almost gets like a redshirt year to improve his back health, improve the bulk around his lower body, and maintains his athletic ability, he has a higher upside than both guys above him.
Okay, now Olawatimi from Michigan.
Yeah.
I have really started to fall in love with him as a Michigan fan of what he's shown me, especially in the Ohio State game. You want to know why Donovan Edwards had those two big runs?
That was him.
So could he be the first center picked?
I mean, my opinion is no, but I'm not too stubborn to the fact that I'm not going to put my label on that. But there are people, and we hear it on the broadcast, and we also hear some people that I talk to. He is the best power guy in the group. Okay. And it's by a pretty wide margin, right? I like Schmitz and his power. They're kind of not even in the same tier. So for these gap blocking schemes where he's not going to have to go catch the 3 technique to the outside shoulder of the guard, he's not going to need to leapfrog gaps and go get linebackers at the second level on a consistent basis anyway. He probably could have the similar grade to the guys above him. So it might even just come down to who do you prefer. I think his improvement from Virginia to Michigan, right? He had allowed 6 sacks over his career until this year. This year he's pitching a shutout so far. And you like to see, in my opinion, the level of competition has been raised. And now he's raising his level of play. That's a good example. Some guys don't do that in the NFL. They get exposed to a higher level of competition. They don't rise to the occasion. They don't raise their level of play. He is currently showing teams that he can raise his level of play as his competition gets bigger. So he's going to be on a small list of guys that could probably gain the most as long as Michigan stays in the hunt.
Yeah, and the more, you talk about matchups against Georgia, that would be one.
Yeah, that would be. Those are 2 freight trains running into each other, him and Jalen Carter. And I'll tell you what, man. I will say this: if they do match up, hope the gods let it happen. If he does his job against Jalen Carter and beats him, he'll probably make as much money in that game as anything else he's done in his entire career.
Well, that would be an excellent matchup, and I agree. Let's hope we get that. All right, Joe Tippmann rounds out your center top 5. Talk about.
I'm realizing how much of a Big Ten fan I am with all these offensive linemen here.
Tippmann. And Wisconsin, what a surprise. The first Wisconsin lineman we've talked about, though. Maybe that says a lot about why the team struggled a little bit this year. Normally, they're at the top of the list.
Yeah, I think we'll be talking about a couple guys next year. But, Tippmann, I'm not sure if he's going to come out. I think this week center class could elevate him because his past 6 weeks, his tape, I've watched 4 of his past 6 games, are top-notch. Okay. I don't always love centers that are 6'5", 6'6", just because leverage and pad level is such a big deal. But he plays with a pretty low center of mass. He's got really natural knee bend and ankle flexion. And I think now the length actually goes to his advantage. And as I've said a few times lately, the the abundance of interior pass rushers that teams are now trying to get on their team at the next level, you need pass protectors in there. And we've never really looked at center as a pass protection premium spot. But if a team is starting to look at, hey, we really need to beef up our ability to protect the passer at center, I think he's the best pass blocker in this group.
Okay.
A little bit of an anchor issue. And again, traditional size. Some teams might say, hey, we don't want someone that big, especially if Kyler Murray's our quarterback. But, I think the way he can move in space, the chew glass mindset, he's a hustler, constantly gets his hips in the hole. He can reach angles that some of these other guys cannot. He's got both short area quickness and long areas quick speed. I feel comfortable with his upside, but he might not be ready for the power game just yet.
All right, so that's going to wrap it up. Talking offensive linemen, and we also added, of course, tight ends. If you've been watching this entire show, we're going to be breaking them up: tight ends, offensive line, and the positions along the way. Keep that in mind because we already have our quarterbacks up, our running backs, our wide receivers. So now we're adding the offensive line and the tight ends within the next few weeks. The goal is to have all of the defensive course caught up. We'll start with edge rushers next. And we're going to probably break things into like edge rushers and, kind of edge rushers, outside linebackers kind of type. And then we'll have inside defensive tackles, linebackers. Try to break it into 3 more shows probably.
Okay.
I could even leave it up to you depending on how you want to do that with, because again, that's the thing that is so important nowadays. It used to be in the older days, used to be just defensive line, linebackers, and DBs. Now it's, you have to have edge rushers in one category and linebackers. Well, yeah, linebackers, but you got a certain group of linebackers here and the other ones there. It's maybe there should be a hybrid position now too coming soon.
Yeah, I wish we could all just be on the same page with it. Then it'd be easy. But everyone's got their own spin on it, and it's a moving target. It changes every year. It's a moving target.
All right, so that's what's coming up. So take a look out for that, and we've got so much more. We're going to be just wall-to-wall NFL draft talk between now and the draft. We have so much lined up. Can't wait to get to it all. And our next project, though, is going to start in 2 weeks, and that is going to be our bowl reports. So make sure to check back for that. So we're going to have reports on every bowl game. So this way you get the opportunity when you watch a bowl game. I don't know whether or not you like to wager on it. If you don't, and you just like watching bowl games, well, we're going to give you an opportunity to zero in on a couple of players that will be playing in those bowl games that could be draftable players for next season. So that just adds to the fun of watching a bowl game. So we'll be doing that real soon. Dave, I appreciate it. As always, I hope
thank you, Greg.
Hope you get a little bit more healthier well, I know when we talk again in the next week or two, you'll be 100% healthy.
Yes, that's my plan. Next time we talk, I'm at 100%. Right now, I'm probably at around 80. But thanks for bearing with me if the voice started to give out a little bit.
That's fine. You're a trooper. Thanks, Dave.
All right, thanks, guys.